Welcome to the Gladiators Summit Preview. My name is Charlene Castellanos. I'm the Director of Marketing for Gladiators. Tonight, our founder, Cecelia Towns, and Jeanette Robinson, Director of Global Merchandising Footwear at Under Armour, will sit down and chat about the importance of career development, mentorship, and a host of other things. So ladies, get your pens and pencils out, because this is pens and paper out, excuse me, because this is gonna be a great chat. A few house rules before we get started. Your cameras and mics will be off. If you have any questions, type them into the chat. And when we get to the Q&A portion, I will ask the questions. So ladies, I hope you have a great time. I am now going to turn it over to Cecelia Towns and Miss Jeanette Robinson.
Hey everyone. Hey Jeanette.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeanette. Thank you everyone who's tuning in for this interview. We really are excited because I know Jeanette is about to drop some gems. So again, my name is Cecelia Towns. I'm the founder of Gladiators. And we have with us today the amazing Jeanette Robertson. She is currently the Director of Global Merchandising Footwear at Under Armour. And before that, she was in an international assignment with Under Armour, working out of Panama City, where she oversaw the sports category strategy, merchandising, and product placement for over 95 markets across the globe. So she, over the past 15 years, has been responsible for developing product lines for some of the most recognizable brands in the world, like Kenneth Cole, BCBG, Dolce & Gabbana, Betsy Johnson, Reebok, Pro Kids, Rocawear. I mean, the list is amazing, right? She also serves as an adjunct professor for various psychology, marketing, advertising, and human resources courses. She loves coaching and mentoring students and young professionals, which is why she agreed to be with us here tonight. We really appreciate you. She graduated magna cum laude from St. Francis College and earned her degree in psychology. She also received her Master's of Arts in Organizational Psychology from Columbia University. Yes, that would be Ivy League. So again, thank you so very much for joining us, Jeanette.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to jump right in. So you, your new position of head of global merchandising for footwear, that's a fairly new position. So congratulations.
Thank
Can
you.
you tell everyone like what that position entails?
Sure. So to keep it simple, I like to keep things simple. My role is to work with the category experts. So working with all of the sport categories, basketball, running, football, soccer, and they're really the experts of the category. And my role is to work with them to have a cross-category position for the brand. So what do we want to show up? Making sure we have the right product, at the right price, at the right place across our global business.
So how is that working across so many groups? Like, how do you manage that?
Yep. Like I mentioned, they're really the category experts, and I am kind of giving them the outside perspective, thinking of it from a regional perspective as well as the consumer perspective. And honestly, because I'm the kind of person who likes to do many things at the same time, it works really well. So that I think also leveraging a lot of the relationships that I've had. So I've been with the brand for about 7 years, and I found that jumping into this role has been really well received by my counterparts because I've had that pre-established relationship with them. And also I've brought another perspective from the region and helping them understand some points of view from the international role. So it's been really fun so far. I think it's still a learning curve since, as you mentioned, it's really new, but working with them and partnering with them and kind of gathering those insights has been pretty cool.
Nice. So this is actually like your third position, your third role with Under Armour, correct?
Yes.
So what have been sort of your keys to success to, navigating Under Armour? Like, how have you been able to, be successful?
So that's like a tricky question because I would say that throughout the 7 years, the definition of success has changed, depending on where I am with my career or with my family life or what I'm looking to learn. I would say some of the key staples have been networking. So that's networking inside the company as well as outside. So knowing people outside of my daily function, knowing people who work in other parts of the business, because a lot of times how we get things done is based on relationships. So knowing who to reach out to if I can't find a shipment of a product, or knowing who to reach out to if my system isn't working in place. So like someone in IT. But really what has also been super helpful has been mentoring and sponsorship. So I think from the time I started my career out of grad school, having mentors inside the company as well as outside has been really beneficial, because they really bring another perspective to my everyday or challenges that I'm seeing. And having sponsorships, having someone who is representing me at a meeting that I may not be at, or projects that come up. I've been offered a lot of stretch opportunities because there's a sponsor there who can speak up on behalf of my skills or on behalf of something I've expressed as an interest. But I also realize that comes with a lot of responsibility, because sponsors and mentors, by representing me, I need to also hold up my end of the bargain. So that has been tremendously helpful. But also, I could go on about this for hours. So the other simple part of the answer is just always keeping check of what success looks like for me. So making sure that how I deem success doesn't necessarily mean how someone else will deem it. So articulating that for others around me so that they can support me to kind of reach those goals.
Awesome. So you said like so much, like you dropped like just a bag full of gems, right? So, all right, let's start with, I want to highlight 3 key things that you said there, right? You talked about networking, you talked about mentors, you talked about sponsors. So let's talk about networking. I know that for a lot of people, especially women, the idea of networking like literally makes them shake in their boots, right? So how did you essentially become, I mean, you're a great networker. How did you do that? Like for someone who's afraid, what are some tips that you would give them?
So that's definitely me, the one shaking in the corner. I am a high introvert, so I would rather go to the cocktail hour and not speak to a soul or speak to the people I know. And I will never forget, I have a mentor. She's still my mentor, and she was my mentor coming out of grad school. And we would go to networking events, and I would never speak to anyone. I would always leave. I would go to the event, which check the box, and then I would never speak to anyone except the people I know. She said to me, how do you expect to meet people if you don't just do it? So she started giving me a challenge that every event I went to, I made the effort to go. So now what was I going to do? Every event I went to, I needed to speak to 3 people I had not met before and get their card. At that point, I was trying to find a job. So it's like, you need to get their card. You need to follow up. You need to make sure that they understand what you're looking for. And I think I've carried that throughout my career, that no matter, even if I'm in a role, even if I'm not looking for a role, I'm always challenging myself to meet new people, start a conversation. And sometimes, you can't force it. You'll know when you have that natural rhythm with someone, but also the follow-up, because we meet people and then we never follow up. And then sometimes you run into them again. So definitely, kind of making sure that I was leveraging that skill. Yeah. I would say the other thing is definitely pushing yourself. Networking, I would say out of most of the opportunities I've had has been from networking. It hasn't been from sending my resume in online and kind of cold calling jobs. Yeah. So networking, definitely, even if you don't need it in the immediate future, is something that people should take advantage of.
Absolutely. I was literally just saying that today. People have been asking about how we got sponsorship for the summit. And I tell people it's just through my network. It has nothing, you can have a bomb resume, a bomb deck, pitch deck.
Yes.
Nobody want to see that if they don't know you.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to that is that you never know when you're going to need your network. So I think I find a lot of young professionals that I meet will network and will talk. And it's not until they need something that they start looking for you or calling you or emailing you, which is okay. Like, I know that they don't know better, so I don't take it personal. But I think truly with any networking relationship, it's the continuation of it, because someone isn't going to put your resume in or help you connect with someone else just because they met you once. They
Right.
need to kind of know you before they kind of sign their name up against yours.
Absolutely. All right. So I didn't forget about the mentors and sponsors. So just to be clear, some people are on the line might not understand the difference between a mentor and sponsor. So first, really quickly, can you distinguish between the difference in your mind between a
Yep.
mentor and a sponsor? And second, how you went about finding your mentors and sponsors,
Or how they found me.
or how they found you? Right.
So I've had various mentors, and I tried to make sure that they have a wide range of experience, genders, different fields, because I found that they help bring different perspectives and ways of looking at things. I have mentors who I can call if there's like an immediate challenge or opportunity that I'm looking for feedback, and I know that I have that relationship, and I have others that I call for, external perspective or thoughts or how to approach something in different ways. And I foster those relationships a little differently. Some I talk to on a monthly basis, some a daily basis, some a quarterly basis. So really understanding what that natural relationship is and not trying to force it. So I've found them through networking events. I found them through professional organizations that I've been part of. And I've found them through organizations in which I've worked in. So, if I have a meeting or there's like a leader that I admire for whether it's their skill or their experience or something about them, I will reach out to that individual and, just start having some natural conversations. I never roll up and say, hey, do you want to be my mentor? It kind of is a natural progression of conversation. And based on how that goes, we end up kind of in an unofficial mentoring relationship. I think the difference between the mentor and the sponsor, and mostly focusing on like internal sponsors. Sponsors for me have been individuals in like the C-suite or in positions that will be in decision-making power that are sitting in meetings that I will not be in, or they also aren't my manager. So they're coming from a different perspective and they hear of a task force or a stretch project or something that's coming up. And based on things I may have expressed to them, they may raise their hand and say, hey, Jeanette may be interested in this. Why don't you connect with Jeanette? And really there as my advocate, and not in a advocate like they're fighting for something for me, but it's like making sure that I'm top of mind in some of the decisions where I wouldn't be naturally.
So then that means that if someone higher up, like a C-suite person, is advocating for you, you have to do great work, right? Because if they put your name in the hat and you don't do a good job, then we all look bad.
Yes. And I would say, when we went back to your first question about success, when I first started my career, success was just making sure what were the words that people associate with Jeanette? Was it hardworking? Was it, professional? Was it, ability to step outside the box? Like figuring out what I wanted that to look like and being able to demonstrate it, because you can't tell someone you have those skills. People want to see what you represent. And I think naturally, based on that stage in my career where they identified those skills and my name, it would help them if they were in a situation that, there's a project coming up and we know Jeanette's a problem solver. Hey, Jeanette would be someone who may be interested in this. Have you guys talked to her? So I agree with you. Definitely, you have to demonstrate these skills or this behavior at work in order to have those sponsors, because you only get one shot at it. And if you are not able to deliver, they'll be more reluctant to kind of be your sponsor again or put their name on the line for you.
Definitely good to know. So before you worked at Under Armour, you actually weren't technically in the sports industry, right? You worked at Rockaware, Pro Kids. I mean, how did you get into sports? And then I guess the follow-up would be, what would you tell to the young woman who maybe doesn't have the sports background but is trying to get into sports?
So I was trying to think of how to tell this story because I kind of fell into this industry, and I'm so grateful that I did. So when I got out of grad school, my background, as you mentioned, is org psych. So I was going to be an HR consultant. Like, this is what I set out to do. All my internships were in HR. And through a networking event, I was able to land a job at Reebok. and started there. I was all excited, moved from New York to Boston, and loved the company, loved the brand. I grew up wearing 5411s. I thought it was so cool. And within a few months of working in HR, I realized, like, okay, the cool factor kind of wore off. And I used to see this group of like employees that were always excited, and they always had like shirts and jackets and shoes. They were always just like going to meetings, and I didn't know what they did. I didn't know anything about product. And my mentor, so when you first start, they sign you up with a mentor. So I would have these regular check-ins with him. And one day I went in and I was like, look, I can't do this anymore. I wanted that job that I see these people, I call their names. I'm like, hey, I want that job that they're doing. And he was like, what? You can't go from HR to product marketing. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, what do they do? And, I got all excited. And he said, okay, hey, I'll give you a 6-month internship. Let's see how it goes. At the end of the 6 months, you go back to HR. And I was like, great, that's perfect. So I interviewed with the different footwear categories: running, basketball, and lifestyle. And the lifestyle team decided to hire me. And I started off like an associate product manager. And I knew nothing about this. I knew nothing about products. So that wasn't my background. But from there, I learned about the consumer, about how to build products. I learned so much within those 6 months. And they decided to keep me on in product. So the next 15 years, I just kind of stayed here in product. So I continuously, I think also because I came from a different background, I brought a different perspective to it. So I was able to apply a lot of the consumer behaviors and like kind of psychological approach to it. But also I had a business mindset. So understanding the retail landscape, understanding like the margins and the profitability. So it wasn't, I didn't have a marketing background, but I did have kind of a different perspective on when the team was going down a path, how to kind of provoke some additional thoughts to how to approach things. And I would say, honestly, every once in a while, like, I can't believe I have this graduate degree that I didn't use, but the space of sports is so enjoying. Like, every day I get up, I'm so excited to go to work. Now, if I worked in HR in sports, it'd probably be just as exciting, but having that touch and feel of product every day has been a true blessing, and I wouldn't have traded for the world.
Nice. So one of the things you touched on just now was sort of, your background, having that diverse background. So how important do you think that that's been to setting you apart from maybe competitors? I mean, because the sports industry is competitive, right? Like, how do you think that's impacted your career, having that different perspective?
Sometimes I would say, at least in the beginning, sometimes it would feel like a disadvantage because most of my colleagues were collegiate athletes or high school athletes. And, they were speaking through the lens of product and marketing through like being that athlete. But what I found was that because I was thinking of it through the feeling we were trying to give the consumer and the emotion we were trying to evoke, and then also thinking of it through a more or less biased perspective and through that like business lens, and being able to take that insight and kind of decipher it a little differently, I found that I started being able to add a different perspective to the conversation. So it wasn't a right or wrong perspective, but I was able to come at it from a different point of view, which helped balance the emotions with some of the more kind of the art and science to it. So I found that I was a good complement to my teammates because of that differentiation. And then the other thing is, we work a lot on product and marketing, but at the end of the day, we're still leaders in the organization. We're working with teams. So, I made a joke to my mother the other day, like, my degree hasn't really gone in vain, because as a leader, you truly need to always understand your teams, how to make them productive, how to have synergy. So all of the good things that I did learn in org psych actually has kind of come into play as I've become more of a leader into leadership roles.
Awesome. So you mentioned balance just now. You have a lot on your plate. So you have this amazing position at Under Armour. You're adjunct professor. You volunteer. You got children. How do you find balance?
That's a good question. I don't know. So that's something that's learned. It truly is. I was thinking about this today. I was listening to a podcast on my way to work. Just, I've always tried to re-educate myself on how to find this balance and how to kind of make sure that I'm giving everyone my all. I would say early in my career, I probably didn't have any balance. And then, as you mentioned, when I started having children, I have 2 kids, the balance was totally disproportionate. I had to balance, I'm known for being a hard worker, and I had to figure out how do I continue being known as a hard worker, but still give my kids their all. So I literally have to make an effort at being conscious of when is my work time and when is my me time, and then when is my being the best parent time. And every day making a conscious effort if I'm talking with my kids, and they keep me honest. So if they're talking to me and I'm emailing and it's late at night, that does not go over well. So that has been really helpful, but also, I've invested over the years in either have the company investing in executive coaching or also me investing in life coaching. So I'd say investing in yourself, and whether it's listening to podcasts, things that can bring you new perspectives and new tools and new ideas, talking to other teammates and friends and mentors and getting different tips. I think a lot of times we try to shoulder it all and we don't look for resources to kind of help us balance, if you will.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think a lot of women struggle with that. I obviously I'm not a man, so I don't know what men struggle with career-wise, but I do know that women tend to, try to be everything to everyone. And
Yeah.
so we tend to lose our balance quite easily. So I think, thank you for sharing that, for being honest and saying, I don't always have it,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, honesty, to your point, is really helpful. In the beginning of my career, or when I even first started having kids, I would never be honest with the teammates around me. So I would just act like everything was okay. Oh, but somebody would miss out. So either I wouldn't make a performance for my kid and they would be left crying, or I wasn't able to complete an assignment. And when you start being honest about what you can and cannot handle with your manager or your teammates, they actually respect it and they're more cognizant of it. And I think a lot of times as women, we're afraid to do that because we're working with so many male counterparts who their wives may be taking care of it and they don't need to speak up. And it's hard, but they respect you more, I think, for being honest. And you respect yourself more so that you don't have to make those hard calls.
So, yeah, I mean, that sounds like you're really talking about setting your boundaries and sticking to them. Yeah.
So hard.
So how did you learn to say no, to say, I'm not going to take that project, or count me out of this one?
It's hard. It's not as easy as I would like it sounds in my head. But my children actually have been a driver of my honesty because they're 7 and 9 now. And when I started realizing that they considered work my main priority, it gave me the leverage to kind of say, I need to do a check-in with myself. Am I really giving anyone my best functioning under this kind of, this rhythm? And then also really prioritizing what's important to me. I love volunteering. I love connecting with the community. I love working with young professionals. I love doing all of these things. So setting boundaries as to when I was going to work on certain things and when I would just say, no, I'm sorry, I can't teach this class this semester, or no, I'm sorry, I can't be at this event, and understanding that people will respect me more for that than canceling at the last minute or not showing up or not giving it my best.
Nice. So let's sort of switch gears and talk more broadly about women in sports, right? So why do you think it's important for women to be heard and involved in the sports industry?
So many reasons to say it. Well, I think the first thing is that it's not males play sports and then women. I think sometimes we forget, like, women are just as important in sports. But even in the sports industry, from a consumer perspective, women are the predominant purchasers of the product.
Yes.
So even if it's a male product or a kid's product, women are making the purchasing. And if we don't understand how they're making the decisions or how they're deciding things for their family or for themselves or them as a consumer, we're missing the mark.
Yes.
And I think, all of the research shows like women are the predominant purchasers of products, period. They're shopping all the time. Men are always complaining about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how companies, really understand them, connect with them, and make sure that it's authentic, I think is key. And if you have a male dominated, table making these decisions, it's not that they can't do it, but you need to have various perspectives, whether it's women or people of, different diversities or educational backgrounds, because it does bring something new to the conversation, to help kind of keep all of the brands like really on top of their game and approaching it from a more authentic space.
Love it. So what's the hardest thing, and then maybe sort of the easiest or best thing about being a woman in the sports industry?
It's changed so much, or at least in the consumer goods spaces that I've worked in, it's changed so much from when I first started. When I first started, I literally could be in a meeting and be the only woman. And it felt, a little different than it does now. Like I felt like I needed to study up on all the sports and I needed to know everything that was happening in order to just have small talk and conversation. Where I believe that, most teammates, the men included, know that in order for us to win in any product or anything that we're trying to do, like we need both, we need a balanced perspective. And, I have friends that work at different brands and working on things that are sports related, and they feel the same thing. I think it's definitely in a place where people are more receptive and looking to hear those different perspectives. And we know that women that's a space that a lot of companies and brands are trying to understand a little better. So they're a little bit more inclusive in, making sure that we're being heard. I would say the best part of it is, the hardest part would be the balance that I talked about earlier, because most of the men are able to do so much more because they have that flexibility. Most of them. There are some dads who are taking care of their kids, and they don't have to make those choices. The easiest part, I would say, it's just like now that you can just bring your authentic self. I think, I don't know if I'd call it easy, but being authentic and just being honest. Being honest is really key, so that people know where you stand and what value add you want to bring.
I love it. So I'm getting a cue from Charlene here.
Yes.
I think we're about to start, question and answer from our audience here.
We got our first question. So our first question is, what advice would you give someone who's trying to break into the sports industry?
The first thing I would say is try to assess what it is that you want to do. I've talked to a lot of like college students and young professionals, and usually they feel like they want to do marketing, or if they're not doing marketing, they can't do anything else. So I would really say, like, what is it you want to do? Where do you think you can add the most value? What does your experience bring? Is it understanding the consumer because you were an athlete, or understanding the marketplace because you really focus on business? Is it human resources? I think there's so many things outside of just touching the marketing and the product. So making sure that you are kind of looking into the various areas. Also, networking. We talked a lot about this in the beginning. Reaching out without any hesitation to someone who works in a brand or a company or a space that you find interesting, and talking with them, because even though they may not be in a position that you're interested in, they can bring a new perspective of roles and opportunities and things that could be of interest to you. And start with teams that you like or brands that you like. Start with things that are more familiar to you that you think you'd be most passionate
And I think that's wonderful advice. I just wanted to add to that. As someone who's coming from the entrepreneurial perspective, I also think it's important to not be afraid to go start your own thing. Like if nobody happens to be hiring you right now and you have an idea, like don't be afraid to just go out and do it yourself. I mean, I remember when I was first trying to break back into sports after practicing law, like that's how I ended up starting Gladiators and Beyond the Game, was because nobody was trying to hire me. So I would say if if the networking isn't working, or if you don't see the place where you fit in, you can create your own space.
Yep, that's a good one.
Excellent. And that question was from Jennifer Porte. Our second question is from Sarah Sachs. She asks, what would you say has been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome as it relates to your career? And how did you overcome it?
That's a tough one, Sarah. There's been a few. The first one is being my own advocate. When I was coming up, you didn't really talk about yourself. You didn't really have to sell yourself. You really relied on your work, showing who you are and your results. And what I had to quickly learn was that I needed to be my own advocate, especially if I'm asking other people to be my sponsor. So not being afraid to speak on behalf of the things that I have delivered upon or the things that I'm interested in and the career pathing. So being articulate about what I'm looking for and what I feel like I've done. And the other thing has really been also being honest, being transparent, sometimes just saying, hey, I can't make it to this because I need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's not always about my kids. Sometimes I can't make it to one meeting because I have another meeting, or I have a project and I can't make it to another. So I think that honesty and not trying to shoulder it all and not trying to do it all has been some things that I've had to overcome. What was the second part of the question?
How did you overcome them?
Oh, okay. Hopefully that answered it.
And our next question is, do you think that Under Armour being the first to introduce the shoe exclusively for females will open up competition with other brands?
Would it be if it opened up a shoe exclusive, you mean?
Yeah, introduce a shoe exclusively for females. Will it open up competition for other brands?
I mean, I think the circle of athletic footwear brands, I think is, pretty small right now. And I think when anyone does anything, it opens up the aperture for others to kind of tackle it. So potentially, I don't know.
Okay, so I think Charlene was saying that's all for the audience. If anybody else thinks of any more questions, continue to ask. But I have questions for days. I'm sure you're familiar with this idea of sort of leaning in. And I think you were talking a little bit about, setting your boundaries and saying no to things. So what's your whole take on the leaning in?
Yeah. I think that in the past, I've had conversations where leaning in meant different things. Leaning in at times has meant giving your career your all and making that your focus, making sure everybody knew what you stood for at work, and at all costs, you were going to deliver. As my journey has kind of evolved and different life experiences, but also just a better awareness of what's important and at a given time, leaning in means leaning into kind of what I spoke about earlier, like leaning into the moment. So if it's work and it's career and it's a project, like you better believe I'm giving it my all, and that's what's important to me. And making sure that I carve out being a great parent and what that time looks like, so that each gets what's important, because I don't think it's not about sacrificing one for the other. But I also believe, leaning in also to me just means like leaning into the female community, leaning into the things that really matter to me and not to other people. Because I think a lot of times, it goes back to what success looks like. Sometimes people define success by what others view success. And for me, I think it's really important that as individuals, we think of what does that look like for me? And if we're concerned that it may look wonky to someone else, that we're not doing what they expect, like articulating, hey, this is what's important to me. This is where you're going to get my focus. This is where I can add the most value. This is how we can work together. Yeah. So I would say that that's definitely been helpful for me. I think if you don't put it in perspective for yourself, it can be a very slippery slope. And you can think that you're giving, your career your all and neglecting other areas of your life, whether it's yourself or your family. And you find out later that maybe you didn't lean appropriately.
Gotcha. I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't lean too much that you fall over.
Yeah.
Right. So can you tell us about a time in your career where you made a mistake and then how you bounced back from that?
Yeah. I'm such a rule follower, so I'm trying to think, which is another thing. I would say, let me think about that for a second, Cecelia. Time that I made a mistake. I would say okay. So there was a time that I was working on a business plan, a strategic plan for the season, but it involved some different teammates, different functions. I was definitely going to need their buy-in because I was trying to completely shift something in a new direction. And the mistake I made was assuming that we would all be on the same page and not doing some kind of prerequisite check-ins with the teams to get some pre-alignment. And it didn't go so well. The strategy itself was well received, but the problem was my counterparts were kind of annoyed with me. Like, they didn't make a fuss about it in the setting in which we were in. But as I mentioned, like, relationships in any office setting is so important. So they were, pretty annoyed with me that this was the first time they were seeing this information, that they did not have time to pre-align or give their feedback. So the lesson for me was really making sure that when something's impacting various teammates or other functions, making sure that, especially if you're taking something in a completely new direction, making sure that you get some pre-alignment with them, even if they're not fully aligned, but at least they have visibility to the information that's coming, so there's no surprises. And I had a manager once who had a no surprise, like, don't surprise me. Like, I don't need to be on board with it, but I don't want surprises. And I've kind of used that as my philosophy now of how teams that work for me, or that just teammates that I work with, like, I prefer not to have surprises because no one wants to be in a setting like that. And it does tarnish your relationship. So it was really important to me to learn that.
Excellent. We have a question from Sarah Sachs. She's asking, looking back on your career thus far, is there anything you would have done differently?
I actually like the career path and journey that I've taken. I still have an urge, and I always tell the HR team at our company that I still have an urge to see what working with my org psych degree really would look like. But because a lot of my career progression and journey has taken some natural leaps, whether it was my first career at Reebok and kind of falling into the space of footwear, to working on watches and learning about the fashion side of the business and coupling that with the experience I had from product, to coming to Under Armour. I had no idea I was going to leave New York and come to live in Baltimore. But the 7 years every year, I would say every 2 years looks so differently that it's actually kept me on my toes and very interested and engaged. So I don't know if I would do anything differently per se about my roles. Maybe I think I would network more at work. Sometimes it's really easy to get stuck into your role and not look up and say, oh my goodness, I haven't networked outside of the company. I haven't networked inside of the company. So those are things I would think I would do differently. But my career journey and path, I think I'm pretty happy with the way that it's been going.
And we have one more question, and it is, do you have any job search or interview tips for young professionals? And I would like for both of you to answer this question.
Yes. I go back to my networking. And one thing I think that sometimes we don't think about when we're looking for new opportunities is networking outside, like thinking outside of the box, like about roles. A lot of times I think people look at like, who's the most senior level person that I can reach out to and send an email to. Sometimes it's really just connecting with your peers. So is someone else looking for a similar type of job? Who have they spoken to? What are some paths that they've taken? Who can they connect you with? One of my biggest successes have been with connecting. So I know you and you may know this other person, and how do you kind of help me connect those dots? Because I think people are more receptive to receiving and connecting and having a, informal interview with someone who was referred by someone else versus just like a cold call. I also would suggest, definitely keeping your social media platforms, reflective of what you are expecting to represent, because I find that when someone sends a resume or is referred to you, the first thing they do is check your social media or your LinkedIn to see what this person's about. So that's something else that I have learned that you need to be really cognizant of. And then your other typical kind of, what's your pitch? If you meet someone right now at, the mall and you express that you're looking for an interview or an opportunity, like what's your quick pitch of what you're looking for, why you're looking for that, and what they can do for you? Because I find a lot of times people will reach out to me and ask for, can we set up a call or informal interview? And then I go, well, how can I help you? Like after we go through that, it's like, so how can I help you? Because I'm ready to help you, whatever that looks like. And they go, I don't know. And I go, okay, I can't help you know what you want. So being prepared with, and I know sometimes that's hard for us. Like, it's like asking for help or articulating what exactly it is you need and not really tiptoeing around it. That's another thing I didn't mention, Sarah, that I think I probably could have done better, is like asking for what you want and being very direct and deliberate about it. I think those are some tips that I would suggest. What would you say, Cecelia?
So I think that especially that last part, that's great advice. Like be ready to know how somebody can help you. But I would say be open, right? So maybe your dream job is, to work in the marketing section of Nike. Well, I would say that
Nike? You mean Under Armour?
I mean Under Armour, my bad. Be in marketing at Under Armour. Like be open, because what if there's another position at Under Armour that doesn't necessarily match what you have in mind? Be open to that position, because it could blossom into something else, right? And also being open, like really knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, because getting a job really is about pitching yourself, right? So learn, like you said, the pitch. Learn how to articulate what it is you want and why you are the person for the job. Because I think a lot of people have this idea in their mind, oh, I want this dream job, I want to do X, Y, Z, but they can't always tell people why I should give you a shot. So be able to tell me why I should give you a shot. And the other thing I would say is have thick skin. Hearing no from someone really doesn't hurt that bad. I promise y'all it doesn't. So keep applying, keep reaching out to people, because I think, you put in the work, you put in the time, and the position that you want is coming. Oh, okay. So, she's telling me to close it out, which we're going to let you have the last few words. Any parting words for, the people tuning in? Whatever you want to say.
I would say that obviously if you dialed in, you're interested in the sports industry. I truly believe it's, sports is one thing that continues to keep people very united. It doesn't matter if you're the athlete or the consumer. And as Cecelia mentioned, there's so many opportunities within this industry. It's not just about this dream job that you have. So if you're really passionate about it, finding your foot in and learning and not being afraid to learn from other people. I think a lot of times we are looking for jobs and look for opportunity, and we want, to find how we can get in and be the know-it-all. It's like, find an opportunity, get in, learn, meet people, network, be a connector, and also just, continue to really drive like our presence in the sports industry. I think women will continue for a foreseeable future to be critical in bringing a new perspective, both as consumer, as athlete, as business leaders. And, I think I could say so many things. I'm trying to keep it short. I think those are two key things to focus on. And also just don't be afraid, as Cecelia said, like have thick skin, because there are going to be a lot of no's. There are going to be, even in when you get the job, there's still going to be no's, things that you want to try, assignments that you want, promotions that you're looking for, mentors that you want to connect with that aren't interested in connecting with you. Don't take things personal. Always remember there's another perspective to it, and kind of keep going. And if you're in Atlanta, definitely check out the GladiatHers Summit.
Yes, please check it out. Oh man, you were amazing. Thank you so much, so much, Jeanette.
Thank you. It's been so fun.
Yeah. I hope everyone, found this to be helpful. We actually, I don't know if you do, but you will be on Working Women Wednesday tomorrow. This segment is going to be shared on Working Women Wednesday. So again, we really appreciate you. Thank you everyone who tuned in. I think we're going to try to make this a more regular thing. So yeah.
Thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Bye.
Charlene. Thanks, Cecelia. Bye.